time for Kaufman's Corner on Mad Dog Unleashed.
Remember Ira?
You mean Ira?
Ira. Dangerous.
In other words, Ira.
In other words, Ira.
Each week, we go inside the head of Ira Kaufman, longtime NFL columnist and all-around good guy.
Do you ever just get down on your knees and thank God that you know me and have access to my dementia?
After a bumpy year for Ira, he's back and better than ever.
I'm back, baby!
How's the voice of Rollins baseball over there, Russo? How you doing?
A long time ago.
He's funny. He's thought-provoking. He's a great spot.
Maybe I'm being a little harsh on Eli Manning, but when you're really being honest, the Giants defense won those 2 Super Bowls. You know it and I know it.
Now, let's get to our weekly chat with Christopher Russo.
Rush yourself to the emergency room you have at appendicitis.
And Ira Kaufman.
Yes, that appendicitis line. We'll come back to Bury Me Forever. Hey, Ira Kaufman. Get him on a Tuesday, thank goodness, because we're not going to be here tomorrow or Thursday, so it's important to get a chance to talk to the great Kaufman. And he says hello. Ira, happy holidays. How are you, pal? Okay?
That's the holidays, baby. You know, I went out to get my mail a little while ago. I get a nice little holiday card from the Russo family from New Canaan, and then I show it to my wife, and her first comment is, why is Doggy wearing a T-shirt? Well, what's he doing in the T-shirt?
Everybody has been telling me that as I took that with a dopey white T-shirt on. I didn't look very good. So that's a good job. You got your card today? You didn't get there before Christmas, Ira?
I got it. Yeah, we got slow people here in Florida. What do you want me to say? Hey, Chris, I want to tell you that we finished watching the box set of the Vietnam War documentary. As a matter of fact, we went over to my brother-in-law's. He's a Vietnam vet. Yesterday, I gave him the box set. I didn't know how he was going to react. I didn't know if he wanted to watch it or not because he doesn't talk about his time there. He was in intelligence. He said he was very interested in watching it. And, Chris, it's illuminating, it's depressing, and you better have some tissues with you when you watch it.
I thought the middles were the best. I thought the Kent State stuff, Ira, Musgrove, the kid, the man from Iowa who almost knocked himself off and a dog saved his life.
He was the heart and soul of that documentary. He was the heart and soul.
Oh, you thought so? You thought so? Did you think it went a little too much? It was almost a little too much with the battles. Didn't you think so?
Incredible footage. I can't believe they got that footage. Yeah, it's tough to look at those bodies, Chris. Bodies strewn all over the landscape. Bombs being dropped constantly from up above. And the most dispiriting thing of all is how we realized early on that it was unwinnable. And the next thing you know, they keep asking for another 75,000 troops. Just a black stain, I think, on American history.
Where were you, Ira? You're a little older than me. You were right on the verge of getting drafted, were you not?
I absolutely was. I think I was number 6 one year, and Brooklyn College might have shielded me a little. I didn't do much at Brooklyn College, but it might have helped me a little bit. So, I was 17 and 71. Maybe it was winding down a little bit. If I was born a couple of years earlier, you could have seen Corporal Kaufman out there on the front lines.
And how about Barry? Is he older or younger than you? Isn't he older?
Barry's older, born in 50. And I guess he got the college deferment. Again, we were a couple of Brooklyn boys got lucky.
Wow. Was your father, was he pro-U.S. there or not? Leo?
Yeah, he was behind it until it became obvious, Chris, maybe 69, that this thing was going the wrong way. We didn't, so Cronkite started weighing in, Chris, and when Cronkite weighed in back then, in those days, he might have had more clout than Lyndon Johnson.
That's an excellent point.
At that time.
Excellent point. That Tet offensive, and Cronkite says, I thought we were winning this war. At the 6 o'clock news, everybody having a little supper, and there's the great Walter Cronkite. That turned off everybody pretty quickly. I'll tell you that right now. And Leo probably was one of them, correct?
Absolutely. And Chris, one thing that came through in the documentary, and I'm not saying that the North Vietnamese leaders were more, had more acumen than the South Vietnamese, but I think their main philosophy was over time, the American public was going to get fed up with the war, and that's exactly what happened.
Right.
That was their philosophy.
They're playing for a tie, and we had to win. And, I mean, I look at it, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to look at it.
Right.
But, they needed the tie, and we had a win. And, it's amazing we didn't learn the lessons from the French. I mean, and what did you think of Burns' performance? You think he overdid it? You think Burns hit the right notes? What's your take on that?
I liked it a lot more than the baseball one. You were surprised that I wasn't effusive in my praise of the baseball because I said a little more Koufax and a little less Doris Kearns Goodwin. I mean, that's my line from the baseball documentary. I thought he got wrapped up with the historians, people who didn't play the game. I want to hear about Frank Robinson. Looking back on his days of racism and playing ball in the National League when they were the dominant league in the 60s. I didn't think it was enough baseball centric, that documentary. This one, look, it's a very emotional 10 discs, Chris, 10 discs with all kinds of special features. It puts you through the emotional ringer without question.
It does. And the music is phenomenal. The music is tremendous. Yes. All right. Now, we got a lot to do here today. Let's get the obligatory comments about Tampa. Played well again. I was shocked. I thought we were talking last week. We thought they'd be shot. They were not.
Yes.
I guess the best way to explain it, we've heard the rumors about Gruden with assistant coaches this week as well. Even McDonough had hinted about that last night. But have they done enough to save Cutter's job, their performance these last 2 weeks? What can you tell me about that first?
Well, a little perspective. They've lost 3 straight games by 3 points. The game before that was the overtime loss at Lambeau. So now it's a 4-week deal where they've been very competitive. Having said that, Chris, they've lost 5 in a row. And they're playing New Orleans this week, and the Saints are motivated. No reason for Drew Brees to lay down here in Tampa. That game's been pushed back to 4:25. And you figure they're going to lose that. And, can you make a case for Cutter with a 6-game losing streak? Difficult. I just watched his press conference. He's wound pretty tight, Chris, pretty tight. Somebody asked him if he's lost control of the team, and, he just bristles. And look, he's got his head down. He's doing his work. They're playing hard. But it's kind of looking inevitable because somebody asked him if he's heard from ownership. 0. Chris, if they were bringing him back, couldn't they stop all this nonsense by just saying Cutter's coming back next year? I mean, they would cut right through all the chatter. Instead, we got crickets, Chris. We got crickets from Gruden, crickets from ESPN. ESPN scared to ask Gruden about what's going on. Chris, don't you have to ask the man what's going on? They don't ask.
Sean's not going to ask that, and he's not going to volunteer his information. Would you agree?
Well, Chris, even though John Gruden would rather not be asked about it, Chris, that's a news organization. You know it and I know it. And if you had Gruden on, which you're hoping to get, and I think you will, if you had him on right now, that'd be the first question you'd ask him.
That's why
Gruden's feelings.
Yeah, that's why he's not going to come on, because he knows you have to answer the questions. Do you think there's some truth to this, that he's seeking assistant coaches? You've been on this theme about Gruden returning next year for a while, so this probably edified what you originally thought, that he's going to coach next year. What's the latest on that?
I think Gruden's camp is working through Ian Rappaport. Rappaport seems to be the one, Chris, that's reporting these things. He's also the guy that reported the strain between Cutter, the alleged strain between Cutter and Winston. Again, Ian Rappaport, NFL Network. Chris, this is the house organ of the National Football League, the NFL Network. And they're the ones that are pushing this Gruden narrative. And you have to think it comes from Gruden's camp. His agent's very powerful. He's got like 10 NFL head coaches under his sway. That's a third of the league. And right now, he's been very manipulative, and it looks like the end's in sight for Dirk Cutter. And you know what, Chris? Part of me says, what's the matter? You can't have one bad year in Tampa now? You're out on your butt? That's not a good message for the rest of the league.
Do you think that Gruden is going to want to go back to Tampa?
I think he's going to have his choice. I'm pretty sure Gruden's coming back. I said it to you 5 weeks ago, and I laid out the reasons, and I think I'm the only one that's ever said he's not having as much fun in the booth. Chris, you were a little taken back by that. But that's my inside information from about 3 different sources. No knock on McDonough, but he does miss Tirico. And, I laid out about 5 reasons to you that day. You were a little stunned, I think, that I had my homework ready.
I was.
And, and nothing's changed. Chris. And I think, now with Del Rio, what's going on with Del Rio? Oakland wants him badly. That could be a possibility. Chris, there's going to be a lot of openings, my man. And it probably could come down to what quarterback he likes the best. That could be the deciding factor.
What happened with Del Rio here? I didn't hear this. What's up with him?
Well, I think he's in trouble. I just think he's in trouble. I mean, big disappointment, Oakland. One of the major underachievers, along with the Giants, along with the Bucks, the Broncos. The Raiders are right there. That's a blah organization right now. Big expectations for them this year. By the way, Chris, I like to lay a little nugget on you like I usually do, and I'll give you this one. Longest playoff drought, which is now 10 years. Longest playoff drought in the NFC, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because the Rams are in, and there was another team that just ended its drought that was more than the Bucks, and so now they can have that, as their epitaph, Chris. A decade of mediocrity.
I did this earlier with King, and I like what the NFL did here. They bypassed the Sunday night game. I know the Buck fan probably doesn't like it. I know John Harbaugh made a big stink about it today. He's completely wrong. From a competitive balance standpoint, they did the right thing. Everybody who's in the mix here, they play at the same time. So since Seattle's in the mix, that means Atlanta's got to play at 4:25, which means the Bucks have to play at 4:25.
That's right.
Since the Chargers are in the mix, that means the Ravens, Bills, and Miami and Buffalo have to play at 4:25. The NBA doesn't do that. Teams end series on Friday. They got to start on Sunday for TV. Baseball maneuvers to get the Cubs in prime time, to hustle other series around. Give them credit. The NFL doesn't care. They're going to bypass an NFL regular season game for NBC to make sure it's competitively fair for their franchises. The NFL gets knocked enough. Let's give them a little credit for that. That is no other league does that. No other league does it. The NBA doesn't do that garbage. That is a great job by the NFL. Give them some credit there. All right, let me hear.
They would have got a huge rating on a Sunday night. Huge rating if they would have had Atlanta, Carolina. Big rating for that game. No question about it.
Give them credit. I know they would have had to move another game there because obviously it was Seattle and the Saints. So it'll be interesting. All right, do you think the Bucks will play hard this week? They're very significant. Saints are going to be playing for a home game. Will Tampa, they've had all these brutal losses, will they come to play or basically, 4:25 by 6 o'clock start heading to that beautiful airport to get the hell out of town? What can you tell me about that?
Well, you want to know about the Bucks, right, Chris? The Bucks. Now they got a mass unit. They're missing a lot of people. But having said that, you and I both thought they were going to get clobbered in Charlotte on Christmas Eve. It didn't happen. They outplayed Carolina that game. I don't know how much you saw of it. Carolina did very, very little until the end. And Winston fumbled 3 times. He had a tantrum at the end of the game because he thought he got the fumble at the end, but they gave it to Julius Peppers, who, by the way, Chris, is still playing incredible football at his age. I mean, Peppers is a marvel. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer. Bucks are going to play hard, Chris. Winston is finishing strong. Winston is playing very well. He's got the potential suspension hanging over his head. We got to find out what's going on there. That could affect, Chris, if they get rid of Cutter, that could affect, who wants to come to Tampa, not knowing whether you got Winston next year.
Well,
so
he's not going to be
a lot of balls up in the air.
He's not going to be gone for that long. 4 games,
well,
maybe?
It could be 6 weeks. It could be 6 weeks.
As much as 6 weeks. Okay. Well, all right.
It could be 6 weeks. Yeah.
All right. A question for you on the 2 franchises that I think, as I started today's show, that really set the tone all weekend. Rivera with the Panthers. He's in the postseason. He's playing against a team that's going to be battling for their lives. He doesn't know what the Saints are doing, in Tampa. And then Coughlin with Jacksonville, that can't go anywhere, that is settled at the 3 seed, coming off a loss, but knowing that, they might play Tennessee again in the wild card weekend. If Tennessee beats them, they'll be the 6th seed, and they're going to play Tennessee for the 3rd time. I think those 2 teams control the whole juice of Week 17. Let me hear your take on Rivera, and let me hear your take on Marrone and Coughlin. Go ahead.
All right, Chris. I think the equivalent for the Jags are maybe the Chiefs, because they are locked into 4, just like the Jags are locked into 3. Now, Chris, Carolina still thinks they can win the division. So that makes a difference. That makes a difference. It gives them a little more motivation. If I'm the Jags, Chris, I don't have to answer to any other AFC team. I don't have to answer, to the Chargers, the Bills. I don't want to hear about it. I've earned my way to do what I want. And if I want to play Bortles for a half and put the backup in, so be it. And I don't think anybody can say anything about it. The same thing with the Chiefs, Chris.
Well, the difference is the difference is, Ira, Kansas City is not playing a team that affects anything with Denver. I mean, Jacksonville is playing a team that affects 3 or 4 of the franchises. Plus, if they lose coming off a loss to San Francisco, they go into the postseason a little bit of a downward turn. Plus, Coughlin, against the Patriots in 2008, played his rear end off when they were in the playoffs anyway, and obviously almost beat the Pats, who were going for 16-0. How about all that layer? What can you tell me about that?
I understand everything you're saying. Now, look, the Pats were a very special situation. The 07 Pats were one of the great teams of NFL history. And they had that cachet about possibly going 17-0, and Coughlin wasn't going to sit still for it. And I was at that game. Well, what a game that was. That was a fantastic football game. Giants lost, right, Chris? But they played very well and gave them a lot of confidence, for the rematch. You're right. Broncos aren't going anywhere. If Reed wants to play Alex Smith for a quarter, nobody's going to say boo. But, Chris, I'm going to say this. I understand they're playing the Titans. But to me, the Jags do what's best for the Jags. And they don't care about any chatter other than that. Now, look, you do make a good point. They lost last week, and you don't want to go in with negative momentum. So I think that is a factor, yes.
All right, well, I agree. Nobody can say anything. But having said that, what do you think he's going to do? Play hard to win or take it easy after the half?
Knowing Coughlin, like you and I do, he's old school. I think he's going to play hard. I think he's going to play to win. Other teams will applaud that. Maybe that opens the door. For Buffalo, Baltimore's going to like it. We'll see what happens. But I'm worried about my Chiefs, Chris. They're sitting at 4. Baltimore's playing very well, Chris. Looks like they're going to be 5. That's not an easy game for Kansas.
No,
City.
gosh,
not
no.
An easy game.
No, we'll get to that. And the Chargers still sit there with an opportunity as well. All right, how does the NFL overturn the touchdown with the Kelvin Benjamin play against New England late in the first half? What's your take about that?
All right, look. The owners' meetings are in March. A week before that, some of the guys from the competition committee go down to Naples, Chris. That's where they go. They go down to Naples for 4 days, and they talk about all kinds of potential rule changes. Here's my suggestion. This time, go down to Naples for 8 days. Give the NFL a little bigger bill. They'll pay for it because, Chris, officiating has emerged in my mind. Much more than Roger Goodell's problems and discipline. Officiating is the number one issue in the National Football League. I might be overstepping my bounds, Chris, but I'm telling you, it's starting to be difficult to watch some of these games. It's difficult. And if you make it difficult enough, people are going to turn off. I'm looking for a flag on every ball that hits the ground off a pass. Every ball, I'm looking for a flag. And you know what? I'm getting a lot of them. They can't return a punt without a flag. Defensive holding, automatic first down. Pass interference is a joke. It's an absolute joke, and the replay system has to be overhauled. I think it's a big, big issue.
Well, I don't disagree with anything you said. I think there's too much replay. I think there's a delay in how you watch a game with each play. I agree with that. The catch situation, I agree with that. But boy, oh boy, they're all of a sudden going to change all this after they have trained their officials for years to go along with this process. And now next year, we're going to allow some of these catches to hold up. And now we're going to not call holds on every play. I mean, you are really going all over the place if all of a sudden you get off some of the stringent things they've done to loosen everything up, Ira, after you spent the last 5 or 6 years tightening everything up. Now you're going to go the other way. Well, that's what you want done?
Chris, specifically on the replay, look, when you got guys like Dean Blandino, is going to err on the side of defending the National Football League. You know that. So for Blandino to be as outspoken as he is, that the system's a little bit broken, and that these things from New York are being overturned when it's not incontrovertible evidence, when that's coming from Dean Blandino and Pereira, Chris, that is a serious problem for the NFL. Normally, these guys don't want to criticize the league. It seems like they're going out of the way to say they've got to revise this. Don't be so quick to overturn calls that are made on the field. If you're going to err, you err on the side of the call that was made on the field.
All right, do you have a big... I get it. Do you have a bigger issue with the Patriot play against Bills or against the Steeler catch a week before that? Which one bothers you more?
I think the Steeler catch because, like you said, according to the strict rules, it was the right move, the right decision. But the guy that's paying the freight, that's watching the ads and ultimately paying, sitting in his living room, now doesn't know what a catch is, and that's a big problem. And now I think it's extending to players and coaches. They're not quite sure what constitutes a catch. You can't have that going forward. It's got to be cleaned up.
I see how they do that. I don't disagree. All right, how about the MVP? I know everybody is now running to Todd Gurley. I would not vote for him because, to me, the Ram attack this year has been multifaceted, and I think McVay gets that. Goff gets the credit for that. I don't think it's the reason why the Rams are – I don't know. I mean, he's a good part of it, but he's not the only reason why the Rams are 11-4. So I would not go to Gurley. I know with Wentz out and Brady struggling, a lot of people might. What's your take on the MVP? You have a vote. Who's your MVP right now in the NFL?
Chris, I got to have my vote in by next Monday. Got to have it in. I think it's a tremendous debate. Now, don't forget, Antonio Brown was in the thick of it till he got hurt. I might have voted for Antonio Brown. Although you mentioned Roethlisberger, it's tough to distinguish. Gurley's coming on strong, Chris. Now, Brady is the guy who has set the bar so high that we take him for granted, just like Belichick. You know, Belichick could win the darn Coach of the Year 7 times in his career, and nobody batted an eye. 8 straight 12-win seasons, Chris. At least 12 wins. I mean, never been done before. Never. So that's the Brady-Belichick access and what they've accomplished. Gurley's coming on strong, Chris. Now, look, I'll tell you this. They're leading the league in scoring. The Rams. They're leading the league in scoring. Nobody saw that coming. If anything, they've always been known as a defensive team with Aaron Donald. Under Fisher, they weren't very good, but at least they played a little defense. They had Aaron Donald. They're leading the league in scoring. I think Gurley is the spearhead, of the movement. I think you'd agree. He had a bad year last year, some injuries. He's bounced back strong. Chris, he's got 19 touchdowns, and he looks like this, generation's Marshall Faulk right now. I think it's very, very tight. One more big game from Gurley, I think it'll put him over the top.
I'm not sure how much he's going to play this week against San Francisco, and I do think Ira, there's probably going to be a little anti-Brady scenario here. It's almost like Peyton Manning with the Heisman his senior year. You were so sick of hearing about Peyton Manning's Heisman. A lot of people didn't vote for him, and they voted for the defensive back. Who they voted? They voted for Charles Woodson. And I voted for Peyton Manning that year. I thought he was getting a raw deal. And I voted for Peyton Manning. And it's almost like you get the same feel with Brady. I think people are so sick of the Patriots that even if you think he deserves the award, I think you're going to go to somewhere else just for a change. How about that for a second?
I think that's a great point. And, quarterbacks, there might be an anti-quarterback pushback because they always win it seems. But, Chris, you can make a heck of a compelling case for Brady. Heck of a case. You and I have talked about this. That's what separates the Bradys, the Breezes, the Aaron Rodgers to an extent. It doesn't matter who they're throwing to, Chris. Doesn't matter. This is a rather anonymous group of receivers. They added Cooks. I understand that. But, even when Gronkowski doesn't play, they score 30 points. The Saints, Michael Thomas, they got Snead. These guys, if you put them on another team, you don't hear about them. The great quarterbacks make these guys, and Brady's example one. If he won the MVP, I wouldn't have one thing to say in argument. I think he's well-deserving.
All right, be interesting to see how they handle that. All right, number 2, and lastly,
Chris,
yes.
Coach of the Year, I think might be even tighter than MVP.
I think you got to give it to McVay. I think you have to give it to McVay.
I think McVay will win it.
Well, who else could get it? What other guy?
I think Zimmer. I think Zimmer's strong. third-string quarterback. You lost a running back, and and they're going to be 13-3. I mean, that's a heck of a season, Chris.
I have to give it to McVay. Come on, that's not.
I think
fair.
McVay's going to win it. I do. I think McVay will win.
All right, now, last thing. I'm sure you saw it here today, the NFL Network. I guess King wrote about it. I did not see that story on Monday Morning Quarterback, but I guess a very good, and I love the game. So, a matter of fact, I watched the 67 Packers on Christmas Eve at 10 o'clock, that America's Game thing, because I love that team.
Yes.
I guess the NFL on Friday is doing a 50-year deal, and the guy who did the piece that will air on the NFL Network is Meredith's kid, Mike Meredith, and it's going to center on Dallas. So much of the 67, when you follow the Ice Bowl, it's about the weather, and it's about the mind over matter. It's about Lombardi's last year, Bart Starr, the Packers, the end of the era. Very rarely do you get a lot of talk about the Cowboys in that scenario. That was their second straight terrible loss. They hadn't won, but they were on the verge. The Packers are at the end. So when you see shows on the Ice Bowl, it's really about Lombardi and, his will to win. I guess this documentary on Friday is going to be more about Meredith and the Cowboys. What you take about that for a sec? Go ahead.
I think that's a tremendous perspective, an untold story. Chris, Don Meredith, the persona of Meredith is that he was easygoing, carefree, didn't take himself too seriously. I think we're going to have another view of him by the time this thing ends. I wish it was 2 hours. I'd watch it if it was 3 hours.
Oh, it's only 1 hour? I didn't know that. It's only 1 hour?
Well, 1 hour. I think we're going to walk away realizing how much those losses took out of Meredith. Now, the first time around, he threw that pick under a lot of duress on that play.
Right.
But they scored. What they score? 27 points. Chris,
yeah, down 14-0, lost 34-27. Correct.
And then nobody looked good in the Ice Bowl, including Bart Starr throwing the ball. But I didn't know that Meredith's son was a filmmaker. But you're right. Very little about the Dallas perspective, and the Jerry Kramer block. Chris, that was another part of it, and it's always from the the Kramer perspective. Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? What a block, and I guess the quarterback sneak was improvised, Chris. It wasn't even in the game plan.
Yeah, I guess I guess they never had called it, and they called it in that sequence. And don't forget, Lombardi also could have kicked the field goal there to force overtime. And, he said, the hell with it, let's get the hell out of here, we're freezing. So they got it. That game, under today's scenario, I don't know if they would have played that game. I know they played the Cincinnati game, but the fact that field was frozen, you think they would have played that game, Ira? I don't know. You think they would have played it today if it was...
Chris, it's tough to call off a game. Tough to call off a playoff game unless there's a natural disaster involved. It messed the game up, but it also gave it a mythical status, Chris. Mythical. Here we are talking about it 50 years later. Boy, that's right in my wheelhouse and yours, 1967. I'll tell you what, if Dallas wins that game, they would have beat the Raiders, and and they would have been world champs.
No question about it. I mean, that is let's call it like we see it, Ira. I mean, there are about 5 or 6 games in the history of the NFL that, made the NFL. I'll say 73-0 with the Bears and the Redskins. I'll put the Eagle-Brown game in there when the Browns played their first game in the NFL and killed the Eagles in 1950, and the Eagles were two-time champs.
Giants-Colts, of course.
Giants-Colts in 58. The Jets-Colts in 69, and the Ice Bowl. I mean, maybe I'm missing a couple in the last 50 years.
Maybe the Christmas game, Chiefs-Dolphins. That's a big one. It's a big one.
Problem with that game is that did not determine a champion. That's the one thing about that.
You are right. You're still the longest game ever played, Chris.
I know that. I don't know. Don't forget, though, Miami lost. Miami got killed by Dallas that year. So I don't know if I want to put that game up there because, the Ice Bowl was the championship. Giants-Colts was the championship. The Browns beat the Eagles. They won the title. The Jets-Colts championship. That game was not a championship game. And that's why the Charger-Dolphin game that everybody loves, me included in 81, that game doesn't belong in that spot either because that's not a championship game for that matter. Not a championship game.
Chris, one more thing about the Chiefs Dolphins, the Christmas Day 71. Now look, I'm an old Chiefs fan, which you point out all the time, Chris, and I stick with this. I've said it for years, and I'm going to stick with it. No single loss in NFL history, none, have ever affected a team like that did with the Chiefs franchise.
I agree.
They were no good. They were no good for 15 years.
100%. Clark Hunt told me that 2 years ago at the Super Bowl. He said that loss, and I remember it walking out of that stadium, reverberated in Kansas City for eons. That's an excellent, excellent point. Ira, great job. Happy New Year. What are you doing for New Year's? What do you got New Year's Eve now? Little cocktail? What are you going to do on?
That's why I'm mad. I mean, I could have been home 8:30. Now I'm going to be home at 11. I got a wife waiting for me. We're supposed to have steak and lobster. Well, what's going on here, Chris? Come on now. Take care, pal.
See you later. Ira's on. Man, here's the update. Our good buddy is Howie Carpenter. We come right back with your calls.